Just delete that old one. Oh my gosh, gotta love technology. Gotta love technology. So we're back. So for those of you that were on the live earlier, I apologize. We had some echo effect coming in. So anyway, yeah. So let's get started. Wendy, we got some good stuff. How are you doing today on Tuesday?
Wonderful. Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We just brought on another provider for our company that actually executes on student loan forgiveness. So we'll have to do an episode on that because that's one of the big things that a lot of people are just burdened with their student loans. And there's actually a way to have 75% of that forgiven by the U.S. government if you have government loans. So good stuff, good stuff. But that's not what we're talking about today. I don't know if you've been following on the news about some of the stuff that Biden's been putting in and things like that in regards to banking changes coming up. Have you heard about this?
Little bit.
What have you heard?
No, I'm just kidding.
No, what have you heard? What have you heard?
That he wants to, I guess the banks have to report any transaction over $600.
Yeah, so you've heard it. And it's not just banks, it's kind of everybody. I mean, so currently the law is if you have a transaction, this is tied a little bit into the Patriot Act, this came around in Bush. And, not just the Patriot Act, that kind of, now you can report to different agencies and things like that. But it really kind of came on the scene looking for money laundering or things like that. Any transaction, and I think it's been around actually since the 70s, but any transaction over $10,000 gets reported. It's monitored, right? And the reason it gets monitored is because they're looking for those big cash moves of things happening. And so you look at that, it's like, well, yeah, okay, that doesn't impact most of us.
Right.
Well, the federal
do a $10,000 transaction, right?
Yeah, I mean, it impacts some of us, but I mean, to move cash from one point to the other. So what Biden is trying to do, the administration, they're actually enacting or trying to enact a law that would lower that to $600. So think about that. I mean, and what they're trying to do, the whole point of this is all about what? It's all about taxes. Right, because there's a lot of cash transactions that happen. I mean, with a lot of different things, you borrow money, somebody pays you back, and this doesn't stop at banking either. It goes obviously credit unions, but I'm talking Venmo, things like that. They're trying to go after the crypto too, and that's the new 1040 forms that came out I think last year started asking about your crypto transactions and things like that. And the whole point of this is we don't want to raise taxes, but we want to raise tax revenue. So how do we do that? So we, kind of keep the tax level where it's at, and we're going to go after everything else. In this $600 transaction, I mean, a lot of people think, well, I don't do a lot of transactions over $600. And I'm going to bet you probably do a lot more than you actually think. You know what I mean? I mean, you think about if you're waiting tables or whatever the cash transactions, right? I mean, think how many times you do a transaction where it's, you're just dealing with cash. I mean, think about that. Or, you've got Venmo coming in or this, that, or the other. You have a garage sale, you sell a used something or other.
I get payments over $600 from my clients all the time.
Yeah. And so what they're doing is they want to make sure that that's, reported as revenue. But, one of the big things to look at, and this is why it's so critical, guys, and this is what we're going to kind of talk about today, is to know the tax laws and how you can protect yourself from it. Because believe it or not, you can actually control your tax situation like you can your debt situation. Okay. If you know the rules of the game. And, Winnie and I were talking last week, right? We've all played the board game Life. If, you and I were playing against each other, you didn't know the rules, but I knew the rules of the game. Who do you think is going to win?
Yeah. You.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of what Winnie and I are trying to do, is explain this stuff of what the wealthy have been doing for years and how you can, use it on a smaller scale or whatever the case may be for your own protection, right? So going back to the $600, I mean, you think about who do you think, Wendy, that this would impact as far as all of a sudden now the bank, your bank problem. So we'll come back to that, but keep going.
So, but who would it impact? I mean, all right, I don't know. I don't know. What's the answer, Don? I don't know.
Well, in the larger transactions, when it was $10,000, typically you had some kind of a business transaction or something like that, or wealthy, the wealthy individuals would kind of cap into that. No, don't get me wrong. There's all kinds of
middle class America, basically.
Yeah, it's going to impact middle class America more. I mean, if you're bartending or whatever the case may be. I don't know, what you're doing, but you've got to have much smaller transactions. And going back to what you just said, what is that going to do? That reporting mechanism, smaller banks, smaller credit unions, your local bank, and middle America, right?
Oh, yeah,
How are they going to
business, isn't it?
There you go. That's the big.
And so then it's all going to be federal banks, bigger.
The bigger banks, right? So you're going to have the B of A's, the Chase. So they're going to consolidate all that, and all that results in what? It results in more control on you, the individual. Yep. Okay. So you take the other thing, and I don't know if we've talked about crypto on here before, and we're not going to get into the whole is crypto here to stay or whatever the case may be, but I think it is here to stay. But I don't know that it's here to stay in its current form, because as these governments, and it's not just the U.S. government, seeks more and more control over our monetary system, because they're trying to capture every single penny on tax revenue from us, right? Because let's be honest, a lot of people do, what's called under the table jobs or whatever the case may be, cash jobs. And obviously you need to report that. I'm not giving tax advice, consult your tax advisor. But the situation is, if you're reporting or not reporting, now it's going to be, and that's what the government's trying to do, is to capture that tax. And they're estimating, like I said, 80 billion in uncaptured revenue is now going to be part of our economy. But who's that coming from? The wealthy are already doing their fair share. That's a whole other discussion. But they're paying based on the tax code today. They're paying what they need to pay.
Yeah.
Okay. You go to those lower income brackets, the ones that are on government programs and things like that, for whatever reason, they don't have the tax money to pay. Mm-hmm. Okay, because they're receiving the tax money. Mm-hmm. All right. So who's left? It's you and I in the middle, kind of again getting crushed. And you think about that. I mean, we've got 340 million people in the United States. What percentage of that is working class, working and actually creating a revenue? I don't know, but 80 billion coming from that. So that's a big amount of money being pulled out of middle America, right? And so that goes back to what we were talking about. And then the other thing is, the fact that these smaller banks are going to get put out of business. And then it's just a tighter and tighter control on middle class. So coming up with ideas on how you can control your tax situation. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Start a business.
Start a business.
Yeah.
Right. And why? What kind of tax benefits do I get out of starting a business?
Write-offs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know what a write-off is, and there was a funny. I don't know if you watch the show. I'm losing my train of thought. It's a show about the family in Canada. He started a business. They own a hotel. Schitt's Creek. It's Schitt's Creek. Yes, Schitt's Creek. Yeah, and I'm saying Schitt's SCH, not cussing. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a funny movie, and the son started a business, right? And he just started buying all this stuff. And his father asked him, "Why are you buying all this stuff?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's all a write-off." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean it's a write-off? Do you know what a write-off is?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I buy it and then I write it off, and I don't have to pay for it." And he's like, no, you have to pay for it, but no, it's a write-off. What do you think? How do you think that works? Well, no, I just write it off, and the government pays for it. And it's like, no, that's not how a write-off works. But all kidding aside, these write-offs are pretty important for the fact that it helps lower your overall income.
Right.
Okay. And I've had some business coaches and things like that. Is again, trying to find something that you like to do to get paid for it. That should be your goal as an entrepreneur, right? I'm doing something that I am super passionate about. You're doing something that you're super passionate about, so it doesn't feel like work at all. But again, being able to go back in and find expenses that tie to that,
right,
and be able to write that expense off. And you get a portion of that discounted on your overall. It's counted as a business expense, so it comes away from your overall revenue. On sole proprietorship, again, talk to a tax professional on that. But that's one of the things that can help prevent and protect you. I mean, so I'd love to hear from our people that are watching this live or that are actually, watching this follow-up. I'd love to hear some comments from you on, what your thoughts on this. Number one, you've got tremendous government intrusion, in my opinion, right? In the fact that, wow, they're literally, and I'm not getting too political, but
really into that conversation, but
no, you can jump in a little bit, but you've got some massive government intrusion on my private life, and trying to find out ways to take more of my money. And let's just call it what it is. It's taxation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's point blank. But talk to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll just say this, that the more control that they have, the more that they can make a split-second decision and take more control, right? Like the more control we give them, the more control they have, and they can get quicker.
Yeah.
And I know that in an African country this week, one of the prime ministers or whatever, I forget, I'm not going to say it because I forget off the top of my head, but he just basically made a medical mandate and said, if you don't do this medical mandate, you don't have access to your banking. And so, I just say the more
put that out there,
putting that out there that, right, this is going to put smaller banks out of business and bigger banks are going to be in control, and the bigger banks might be controlled, right? Because they have people influencing them from the top. And then when the government says, hey, we decided this needs to happen and we're going to put this mandate in that's unconstitutional, like they've done with other things, then we're losing even more control. So I feel like this is a much bigger deal than just, oh, I might get taxed more.
Oh, no, it is. It is a much bigger deal. I mean, so you look at that piece of it, it again gives more control over somebody's finances. Then you look at the vaccine mandates and things like that are coming down the pike too. And, we're out there talking to people that are frustrated with the fact that they were heroes last year. You see this a lot with nurses, or, we were heroes last year and now all of a sudden we're losing our jobs because we don't want to get a vaccine. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. We've talked about that. I'm an anti-mandate guy. I'm freedom, United States, we the people, that whole thing, the Constitution, it's here for a reason. But that's exactly what it is, because it is going to drive those smaller banks out of business. A lot of you may be going, well, why would a smaller bank have to do some extra reporting? No, it's a lot of extra costs and expenditure. I mean, you think of all the transactions that are over $600, house payments, car payments, you got to report all that. And so it puts a big burden on the banks. Smaller banks can't keep up with that. And if they're not in compliance, they're out of business, which means those assets will be absorbed by larger banks. So that local mom and pop bank or your local, county bank may be out of business because of this, or your costs are going to go up, to pay for this, those extra staffing. So one or the other is going to happen. And then the next piece is, it enables more control. So I see everything kind of shaken out like this. Number one, they institute this. If there is some kind of vaccine mandate that happens that ties to your money, and the federal government's trying to do that with unemployment benefits, right? If you have the vaccine or you lose your job because you don't take it.
At this point, that's not far-fetched.
That's not far-fetched, right? And then you add in the whole crypto to it as well, right? And going to a lot of places aren't accepting change now because there's a change shortage going on. And we've gone to a lot of events, personally, that are cashless now, because of the exchange of cash, and cash is dirty and you can get the virus and stuff from it. So we're already shifting to a cashless environment before COVID. Now it's kind of on acceleration. So the next phase is looking at the crypto. The government likes crypto, the concept, right? What they don't like is the lack of control, which was the whole reason crypto was created, right? The autonomy, things like that. And I talked to a friend of mine yesterday about, crypto is used by criminals and stuff like that. I'm like, I recall I watch a lot of crime dramas and stuff like that, and Narcos on Netflix and things like that. I recall big pallets of money being used for crime too. So I don't think that really has to do it. Maybe it gives a little more autonomy, but we've that's about the extent of it. I kind of, that's a bumpkiss argument, but China is in the process. They've outlawed crypto. They're creating their own cryptocurrency to be used by their citizens. Why wouldn't the United States do that? And so now they've got complete control over it. And like you said, it's just a domino effect of control, and you've got to know what's going on. And my whole thing on this is, kind of just have your eyes open, your ears open, listening for this stuff. But I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I think it's a good rabbit hole. Because the whole point of this show is teaching people how to make more money, and like Winnie just said, find ways to make money to get those write-offs. Even I don't care if you're selling Avon or whatever the case may be, or doing some kind of consulting, on the side, just to have that ability to do a write-off. find something that you love to do and talk about that. And then, the other piece is being able to keep more of that money and protect more of that money. And what would you do if all of a sudden every single penny of yours was now being reported to the IRS? Okay. Which I'm not saying don't pay tax. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
Take, again, go back to know the rules of the game.
Right.
Know the rules of the game. And that's
now
where
about our last conversation about like gold and silver and you know what I mean? Like I feel like it makes it even more important to have some silver in my house. Right.
Seriously, right?
Keeping some stuff out of the banks.
Yep. And, I tell my clients, I do financial planning for those of you that don't know my background, but I tell clients, you want to have 10% of your assets in precious metals, right? That's kind of a safe rule. And you want to have, some money in a safe or somewhere. My grandma used to keep it in an envelope in her freezer. I kid you not. And she'd send me as a little boy, yeah, go grab a 20 out of there. And I'm like, okay. That's where the term hard, cold cash came from, I guess. I don't know. But you look at that, and you want to have some cash because, we saw what happened in Greece a few years ago when their economy went. And, all of a sudden the same thing happened in Venezuela as well. You were limited on what you could pull out of the bank at any one time because, to avoid a run in the banks and things like that. Boy, we're painting a really dark picture right now. But you want to have some cash available.
But you know what, John? It's a reality. It's something that because when we turn a blind eye to the things that are happening, we wind up like the people in Venezuela right. And this stuff isn't absurd. It's not crazy yet. Yes, this is America and we would hope none of this would happen here. However, a lot's happening that we never thought would happen. And so turning a blind eye and not being educated on your options is the worst thing you can do. Putting your head in the sand and then regretting it later.
Yeah. No, and you're exactly right. Venezuela, for those of you who may not know, the country in South America was one of the wealthiest countries in South America for the longest time, and it's gone through a massive upheaval. And they are it's a situation where there's shortages and stuff like that. And the money is just virtually worthless now. And this was a country that at one point in time they would come to the United States because it was cheap.
Yeah.
Okay, think about that. Yeah, we're going to go to Disney World because it's a cheap vacation, kind of like, people in the United States will go to Mexico or the Caribbean or something like that for a vacation because of the dollar exchange. So, that's kind of really, a scary thing when you start to think of the U.S. like that. But look around you, take a minute, like Wendy said, just look around you and see what's going on and play that out in your mind. What happens if this law goes into play? What's next? Okay. The vaccine mandate, a lot of people are in favor of a vaccine mandate to keep our kids safe and this, that, and the other. I understand the logic behind that, but you got to look at the bigger picture, not just your world. For the simple fact that, again, I read an article yesterday that America is built on a just-in-time inventory. And who moves that inventory around? Truckers, right? Semi-drivers. That's how America moves its stuff. 50% of truckers said that they would not take a vaccine, that they would tell their boss to fire them. A lot of those trucking companies have over 100 employees. They're already strapped as far as staff, employees currently. That's why I don't know if you've gone into a Walmart lately.
They're saying get your Christmas presents now, by the way, because you're not getting them in time if you don't.
Yeah, so a lot of this, kind of is scratching your head going, okay, what's going on here? And, you look at that. So all of a sudden they are already short staffed. They lose another 50%, 12%, because the average age right now is 55 and 56, for truck drivers in the United States. Okay. So they said that they're going to retire. So that's 62% of the current staff. And, part of the government plan is, okay, if that does happen, we're going to bring in military to start doing this. Think about that. So all of a sudden you've got military driving our trucks around to move stuff. It starts getting almost like is this a third world country or what's going on here? And the real question is, going back to you, not you, Wendy, but you, the viewer, how does that impact you? With regards to kind of having your house in order and stuff like that, not only just financially, but just in general. And so our goal today is really kind of open the eyes and say, hey, this is what's going on. You want to be aware of this stuff. So I don't know, Wendy, I feel like we went into kind of like, what's that National Geographic show that used to be Prepper Community? I don't know what it was, but something like that. But that's not what we're trying to talk about.
Shelters underground.
Yeah, exactly. Mad Max, where we're all driving around in souped up Mustangs. But it's something that you want to be aware of what's going on and be prepared financially. And that's the whole thing.
Prepare, right? You sell life insurance. You prepare. It's not fun to talk about, oh, you're going to die one day. Let's prepare for that, right?
Yeah.
It's not like the most fun stuff, writing a will and things like that. But these are things that we have to think about. We have to prepare for. We have to understand could be a reality.
Yeah. And do a little homework. I mean, that's some of the stuff that's out there too. I mean, you'd be amazed at some of the information. A lot of financial advisors, will help you with this stuff. That's really the design of this show too, is to kind of help you and guide you on what exactly you need to do in order to get your hit your financial goals, and then B, protect yourself, because it's kind of all inclusive. You want to talk about the growth piece. You want to talk about the protection piece, not just the insurance component you were talking about, but protecting your assets. And you want to talk about the tax piece. Because a lot of people are putting all of their money into a 401k, which limits you. Obviously you don't have access to it without penalties. And then you also are putting all your tax burden down the road. When you've left your job, you have no income left. That's when you're going to pay the most taxes. So, you want to kind of talk about that stuff. But going back to the banking and what the impact is on there, that's just on a much more tactical level is, okay, I need to have some cash in my house. Mm-hmm. And I need to be aware of, if I am, doing cash jobs or whatever the case may be, that's going to be reported now. So you plan accordingly from a tax perspective and be ready to pay, your fair share of taxes, so to speak, using the air quotes there. So any more thoughts on that?
Now, kind of just going back to what you said about like write-offs and having a business. It's funny because I had an accountant in the first couple of years of my business that were really successful, that I wound up, honestly, the opposite. Like I was paying way more than I felt like I should. And it kind of messed me up a little bit. Well, 2020 taxes done. And I am like blown away at somebody that knows what they're doing. And I come out on top in 2020. And it was my highest revenue year of my career. Yeah. And because of the way that they set it up with me paying myself a salary and an S corp in all this, I wound up not owing any money. And I'm so stinking excited about that. So it actually has really helped me. Being an entrepreneur in 2020 was extremely helpful. And anyway, so it's pretty cool.
No, that's exactly right.
Get the right accountant. Find the right accountant that understands entrepreneurship. But starting a business, especially if you're not making a lot of money in your business, starting a business is going to help save a ton in taxes. It really is.
Yeah. And that's the key, right? And that's the whole game, is how do I keep more of my money? Because here's the secret, folks. It's not about how much money you make or how much money you grow, in your various growth accounts and things like that. It's all about how much of that money you actually get to keep. And that's the big focus, is how much of that money are you keeping versus just letting it go. And a lot of people, I'm surprised, just kind of, shrug their shoulders. Oh, well, it is what it is, or, death and taxes, right? And that's not it at all. I mean, like I said, as you control your debt, you can also control your taxes to some degree as well, a large degree. It's just a matter of building the right team. We've talked about that in the past too, building a financial team. And maybe we need to revisit that and look at,
what does the financial team look like? Yeah.
Who does your financial team, or what does your financial team look like? Who's on that team? And why do I need that team? I can just go get the information on Google. That's, if you're trying to build a successful life based on what you read on Google, it's, I heard a friend of mine one time call Google the bathroom wall of the 21st century. And I'm like, wow, that's a really good analogy. It's good information out there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you obviously find us through Google too, but it's one of those things. But again, I just wanted to make everybody aware of this new law that's coming out, or that's being proposed. I don't know that it's actually going to come out, but if you don't like the sound of it, definitely write your senators and representatives and let them know what's going on, because it will definitely impact us here in the working class the most significantly. Not only with our own personal income, 80 billion out of our pockets into the government. But secondly, looking at, protecting our small banks and things like that. And do you really want to lose that? So everybody, I want to say thanks. Do me a favor. If you got some value out of this, share it with your friends and family. Go ahead and click subscribe down below if you're on YouTube. If you're not, find us on YouTube at Black Swan Money. You would see Winnie and I every week, and join us every week. And we'd love to have you join us on StreamYard too. That way we can get a little more interaction on the chiming and stuff and the questions. But if you do have some questions, post them in the YouTube. We'll get those answers back to you and let you know what's going on. And again, we'll see you next week on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. Thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.